The hospital station floated in the darkness of space like a bright jewel against the black. Its white walls glowed with soft light. Its windows showed the gentle blue of medical bays where thousands of patients slept and healed. This was St. Hilara's hope, and for 30 years it had been a place of miracles. Dr. Yuki Tanaka stood at the main observation window and watched a transport ship approach. More refugees, more wounded, more beings who had fled from the Vareth Dominion and their endless hunger for conquest. She did not care what species they were. She did not care what side of any war they fought on. She only cared that they were hurt and that she could help them. This was what humans did now. This was what they had done for 112 years. When humanity first reached the stars, they found a galaxy full of empires and wars. Every species seemed to fight. Every nation seemed to conquer. The aliens looked at the small pink creatures from the little blue planet and expected them to be the same. They waited for humans to build weapons and claim territory and fight for dominance. But humans surprised them. Instead of warships, they built hospitals. Instead of weapons, they created medicines. They wrote the hospital accords and convinced every major power in the galaxy to sign them. These accords were simple. Medical stations were neutral ground. No one could attack them. No one could use them for military purposes. The sick and wounded of any species could come and receive care. The galaxy thought humans were strange. Some thought they were weak. But over the decades, human medicine saved millions of lives across hundreds of worlds. Human doctors became respected everywhere. Human hospitals became symbols of hope in a galaxy full of violence. Yuki had worked at St. Hilara's Hope for 15 years. She had treated Solori refugees with their beautiful silver skin. She had healed Krath soldiers with their forearms and proud warrior hearts. She had even treated Varath patients, the insect-like conquerors who were now sweeping across this sector of space. She treated everyone because that was the human way. The transport docked and new patients came aboard. Solori families with children, old ones with wounds from Vareth plasma weapons, young ones with the empty eyes of those who had seen too much death. Yuki welcomed them all and assigned them to beds and began the long work of healing. She did not know that Varath warships were already approaching. She did not know that in 3 hours, everything would change. The first warning came from the station's sensors. 3 Vareth cruisers had dropped out of faster-than-light travel and were moving toward the station. This was not unusual. Varath ships sometimes came to collect their own wounded. The hospital accords allowed this. But these ships did not request medical assistance. They did not ask for their wounded. Instead, they demanded something else. Human station. The Vareth commander's voice crackled through the communication system. You are harboring enemies of the Dominion. You will surrender all Solori refugees to us immediately. You have 1 hour to comply. Yuki felt her heart go cold. She walked to the communication center and took the microphone from the young officer there. Her hands were steady. Her voice was calm. Vareth vessel, this is Dr. Yuki Tanaka, director of St. Hilara's Hope. Under the hospital accords, which your government signed 40 years ago, this station is neutral medical territory. We do not surrender patients. We do not participate in any military action. Our patients are under our protection until they are healthy enough to leave on their own. There was silence for a long moment. Then the Vareth commander spoke again. The Dominion does not recognize your accords. You have 1 hour. Yuki closed her eyes. She thought about the 4,000 patients in her care. She thought about the 800 staff members who had dedicated their lives to healing. She thought about the Solori children in Ward 7 who had just started to smile again after weeks of trauma. Then you will have to wait forever, she said, because we will never surrender our patients. She ended the communication and turned to her staff. Their faces were pale with fear. They knew what Vareth cruisers could do. They knew the station had no weapons, no shields strong enough to stop plasma cannons. Begin emergency protocols, Yuki said. Move all patients to the intersections. Send a distress signal to Earth and to the Galactic Concord. And someone contact the other human stations. They need to know what is happening here. The hour passed slowly. Staff members ran through corridors, moving patients on hoverbeds, carrying children in their arms. Doctors and nurses who had never known violence worked with desperate speed to protect those in their care. Some patients who could walk helped those who could not. A Krath warrior with bandages on his chest carried 2 Solori children, one under each of his forearms. When the hour ended, the Varath commander spoke again. Human station, you have made your choice. The Dominion will now demonstrate what happens to those who defy us. The first plasma bolt hit the Eastern Medical Wing. The explosion tore through 3 floors of patient rooms. Fire and vacuum rushed through corridors where moments before, doctors had been treating the sick. The screams came through the communication system before it failed. Yuki was thrown against a wall. Blood ran down her face. Through the cracked window of her office, she could see the Varath cruisers firing again and again. Each shot killed dozens. Each explosion erased years of hope and healing. She crawled to her feet and ran toward the medical wings. She had to help. She had to save someone. That was all she knew how to do. In Ward 7, she found the Silori children. The ceiling had collapsed. Small silver bodies lay still among the broken beds and scattered toys. A young nurse named David knelt among them, crying and trying to find a pulse on a child who no longer had one. "Dr. Tanaka," he sobbed. "They killed them. They killed the children." Yuki held him as the station shook with another impact. She held him and watched through the broken window as the Varath cruisers continued their attack. She held him and felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Anger. The attack lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, St. Ilara's hope was a broken ruin drifting in space. Of the 4,200 patients, only 300 survived. Of the 847 human staff members, only 62 lived. The Varath commander broadcast images of the destruction across the galaxy as a warning to anyone who might shelter enemies of the Dominion. Yuki was one of the survivors. She floated in an escape pod with 11 others, watching the debris of her station scatter into the void. She had dedicated her life to healing. She had believed that mercy was stronger than violence. She had been wrong. When rescue ships finally arrived, they found her sitting in silence. A medic tried to treat the wound on her head, but she pushed him away. "Send a message to Earth," she said. Her voice was empty of everything except cold fury. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them the Varath attacked a hospital. Tell them they killed our patients. Tell them they killed children." The medic nodded and went to the communication system. Yuki looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Varath Dominion was celebrating their victory. They thought they had taught humanity a lesson. They thought they had shown the galaxy what happened to those who defied them. They did not understand what they had done. They did not know that somewhere on Earth, in sealed vaults beneath the lunar surface, ancient weapons were waiting. They did not know that humanity had not always been healers. They did not know about the 3 centuries of blood and fire that had convinced humans to choose peace. They would learn. The galaxy would learn. Some species were peaceful because they were weak. Humanity was peaceful because they remembered what happened when they were not. And now, for the first time in 112 years, humanity was going to remember again. For 72 hours, Earth was silent. The galaxy watched and waited. News channels across 1,000 worlds showed the images of St. Ilara's hope burning in space. Alien commentators spoke about the tragedy. They called for dialogue. They urged calm. They expressed concern and offered thoughts and prayers, but no one acted. The Varath Dominion had conquered 42 worlds. No one wanted to be the 43rd. On Earth, in the Great Hall of the United Terran Parliament, representatives from every human nation sat in silence. The images from St. Ilara's hope played on the massive screens. The faces of the dead scrolled past. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Nurse David Chen, 4,000 patients whose only crime was being sick in the wrong place at the wrong time. President Adaora Okonkwo stood at the podium. She was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen much in her 70 years of life. She had been a doctor once. Before politics, she had worked in a human hospital on the border worlds. She knew what had been lost. "My fellow humans," she began. Her voice was steady but heavy with emotion. "I am not here to mourn. There will be time for mourning later. I am here to remind you of something we have chosen to forget." She pressed a button and the images on the screen changed. Now they showed something older, something darker. Images from human history books. Cities in flames, mushroom clouds rising over dead landscapes, mass graves stretching to the horizon. 300 years ago, humanity almost destroyed itself. We called it the Age of Fire. For 3 centuries, we fought wars that killed billions. We created weapons that could crack planets. We developed strategies so efficient that we could conquer entire star systems in days. We were very, very good at war. The Parliament was silent. These images were taught in schools. But seeing them now, in this context, felt different. It felt like a warning. When we finally stopped, when we finally chose peace, we made a decision. We would seal away our weapons, we would close the shipyards, we would become healers instead of killers, and for 112 years, we kept that promise. President Okonkwo looked out at the representatives. Her eyes were hard. The Verath Dominion has broken something today. Not just our hospital, not just our people. They have broken our peace. They have reminded us of what we are, and now we must decide what to do with that reminder. In the viewing galleries above the Parliament, alien ambassadors watched with growing unease. They had always seen humans as soft, friendly, helpful. The species that built hospitals and wrote accords and refused to fight. Now they were seeing something else in these humans. Something old. Something cold. A representative from the North American Union stood up. He was a young man with the look of someone who had never known war. Madam President, surely we can resolve this through diplomatic channels. The Galactic Concord has mechanisms for... The Galactic Concord has done nothing. President Okonkwo's voice cut through his words like a blade. They expressed concern. They called for dialogue. They did exactly what they always do when the Verath attack someone. Nothing. She turned back to the screens. Now they showed the lunar vaults. Massive doors sealed into the gray rock of the moon. Doors that had not opened in over a century. Behind those doors are the weapons we swore never to use again. Ships that can glass planets. Bombs that can crack moons. Soldiers who trained in arts of war so terrible that we banned them from being taught. We sealed them away because we were afraid. Not afraid of our enemies. Afraid of ourselves. The alien ambassadors were whispering now. They had heard rumors about human military history, but they had always dismissed them as exaggeration. Humans were doctors. Humans were healers. Humans did not fight. The Verath have given us a choice. President Okonkwo continued. We can mourn our dead and do nothing. We can trust the Galactic Concord to handle this. We can hope that the Dominion will be satisfied with one hospital and will not attack another. She paused. The silence was absolute. Or we can open the vaults. We can remind the galaxy what happens when you hurt humanity. We can show the Verath that the species they attacked is not weak. We never were weak. We simply chose not to be strong. The vote took 3 minutes. It was unanimous. That night, across human space, a simple message was broadcast on all frequencies. 3 words that made every alien intelligence agency scramble to understand what was happening. Open the vaults. On Luna, the great doors began to move for the first time in 112 years. Dust fell from ancient seals. Lights flickered on in hangars that had been dark for generations. And ships began to wake. The Thanatos-class dreadnoughts were first. Massive vessels 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that had no names in any alien language. They had been maintained by small crews of keepers, men and women who had dedicated their lives to making sure the ships were ready if they were ever needed again. They had hoped they would never be needed. Now they prepared their vessels for war. In the asteroid belt, the Fury carriers powered up their engines. Each one held 1,000 fighters. Each fighter was piloted by an AI that could think faster than any organic brain. They had been sleeping for a century. Now they woke, and they remembered their purpose. On Mars, the old soldiers came out of retirement. Men and women in their 80s and 90s, who had trained in the old ways before the peace. They moved slowly now, but their eyes were sharp. They remembered the strategies. They remembered the tactics. They remembered how to break an enemy completely. Admiral Kenji Oyelaran was 103 years old. He had been 17 when he completed his training, and then the peace had come, and he had never fought. He had become a teacher instead, then a historian. He had spent decades hoping that his knowledge would never be needed. Now he stood on the bridge of the Thanatos-class dreadnought Inevitable and watched his fleet assemble. 47 ships. It was a small force compared to the Dominion's thousands. But then, quality had always mattered more than quantity. A young officer approached him. She was barely 30, one of the new generation who had never known anything but peace. Her hands were shaking. Admiral, I have a message from the Verath ambassador. He is demanding to know what we are doing. He says the Dominion will not tolerate threats. Kenji smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Tell the ambassador that humanity does not make threats. We make promises, and we keep them. Across the galaxy, alien governments were in chaos. Their intelligence agencies reported impossible readings from Sol system, power signatures that made no sense, ships that should not exist, weapons that violated known physics. The Solori government, still reeling from the Varath conquest of their colonies, sent a desperate message to Earth. What are you doing? What are these ships? We have never seen anything like them. The human response was simple. You were not supposed to see them. No one was. But the Varath killed our doctors. They killed our patients. They killed children in hospital beds. So now you will see what humanity kept hidden, and so will the Dominion. In the throne room of the Varath homeworld, the Dominion Council gathered to discuss the human response. They were not worried. They had 8,000 warships. They had conquered 42 worlds. What could a species of healers do against them? One of the council members, an old Varath who had lived longer than most, raised a claw. I have studied human history, he said. Before they became healers, they were something else. Something terrible. I advise caution. The High Queen of the Dominion laughed. Her mandibles clicked with amusement. They are soft. They have been soft for over a century. Whatever they were before, they are not that anymore. Let them send their little fleet. We will destroy it, and then we will burn Earth itself. The galaxy will learn that no one defies the Dominion. The old Varath shook his head slowly. You do not understand. Humans did not become peaceful because they were weak. They became peaceful because they were afraid of what they could do. You have just given them permission to stop being afraid. The High Queen ignored him. She gave orders for the Third Expansion Fleet to intercept the human force. 800 warships against whatever the humans had managed to assemble. She was very confident. She would not be confident for long. The Third Expansion Fleet of the Varath Dominion was their pride. 800 warships crewed by the finest warriors of the Hive. They had conquered 12 worlds. They had never lost a battle. Their commander, Fleet Master Vexenal, had personally led the assault on the Solori homeworld. He was considered one of the greatest military minds in Dominion history. He watched the human fleet approach on his command screen and felt nothing but contempt. 47 ships. The humans had sent 47 ships against his 800. It was not even a battle. It was an insult. They are brave, his second-in-command observed. Foolish but brave. They are desperate, Vexenal replied. They know they cannot win. This is a gesture. A final act of defiance before they accept the inevitable. We will destroy them quickly, and then move on to Earth. The two fleets drew closer. The Varath ships formed their standard attack formation. A wall of cruisers in front, carriers in the middle, the massive hive ships in the rear. It was the formation that had crushed every enemy they had ever faced. The human ships did not form a formation at all. They simply flew forward in a loose cluster, as if they did not care about tactics. Vexenal clicked his mandibles in amusement. They do not even know how to fight. This will be over quickly. He gave the order to fire. 800 ships unleashed their weapons at once. Plasma bolts, missile swarms, gravity beams. The space between the fleets filled with fire. It was enough firepower to crack a small moon. None of it hit. The human ships moved in ways that should have been impossible. They slid between plasma bolts. They twisted away from missiles. They seemed to know where every shot would go before it was fired. In the time it took Vexenal to blink, the human fleet had crossed half the distance between them without taking a single hit. What? He began. Then the humans fired back. Vexenal had never seen weapons like these. Beams of pure darkness that seemed to erase matter rather than destroy it. Pulses that made his ship simply cease to exist. One moment a cruiser would be there. The next moment there would be nothing. Not debris. Not explosions. Nothing. 100 Varath ships died in the first 30 seconds. Vexenal screamed orders. His captains tried to respond. But the human ships were among them now, weaving through the Dominion fleet like predators through a herd. Every time they fired, a Varath ship vanished. Fall back, Vexenal commanded. All ships, fall back and regroup, but there was no falling back. The human ships were everywhere. They moved so fast that the Varath sensors could barely track them. They fired so accurately that every shot found its target. They fought with a cold efficiency that Vexenal had never seen in any species. A beam of darkness struck his command ship. Half of the bridge vanished. Officers around him simply disappeared, leaving nothing behind. Vexenal stumbled back, his mind unable to process what was happening. Impossible, he whispered. This is impossible. His second in command, or what was left of him, tried to speak. Fleet Master, we have lost 400 ships. We must. Another beam hit. The second in command was gone. Vex now looked at his command screen. Red lights everywhere. Ships dying faster than the computer could track. The mighty third expansion fleet was being erased from existence. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, 800 Verath warships had been reduced to nothing. No survivors, no debris, no wreckage, just empty space where a fleet had once been. Admiral Kenji Oyeleran sat in his command chair and watched the sensors confirm what he already knew. Complete victory. No human casualties. No human ships damaged. It had been exactly as the old training simulations predicted. He felt no joy. Only a deep, terrible sadness. Send the message, he told his communications officer. The message went out on all frequencies. Every ship in the galaxy heard it. Every government, every news network, every living being with a receiver. To the Verath Dominion, you have demonstrated that you do not recognize the sanctity of mercy. We acknowledge this. We will conduct ourselves accordingly. To the rest of the galaxy, do not interfere. This is not your war. Stay clear of Dominion space, and you have nothing to fear from us. On 100 worlds, beings of 100 species watched the recordings of the battle. They watched 800 warships disappear in 11 minutes. They watched the human fleet fly through the wreckage that was not there. Because there was no wreckage, fear spread through the galaxy like a disease. On the Solori refugee world of Haven's Rest, survivors of the Dominion's conquests gathered around screens and watched in shocked silence. An old Solori woman, her silver skin scarred from Verath plasma burns, began to weep. They came for us, she whispered. The humans came for us. On the Krath homeworld, the warrior councils met in emergency session. The Krath had always considered themselves the greatest fighters in the galaxy. Now they watched recordings of human ships doing things that Krath ships could not do, moving in ways that Krath pilots could not move, fighting with a precision that Krath warriors could not match. What are they? A young Krath warrior asked. How can any species fight like that? An old general, one who had studied human history, shook his head slowly. They are what we always feared we would become. They are war perfected, and they have been hiding this for over a century. On Earth, President Okonkwo watched the reports come in. Complete victory, no human losses. The third expansion fleet no longer existed. She should have felt triumph. Instead, she felt sick. We did this to ourselves, she murmured. We made ourselves into this. Her aide, a young man who had been celebrating moments before, looked confused. Madam President, we won. We showed them what happens when they attack us. Yes. Okonkwo's voice was heavy. And now we cannot stop. The Verath will not surrender after one battle. They will send more fleets. They will attack other targets. And we will have to keep fighting until they are broken completely. She looked out the window at the peaceful gardens of the presidential residence. Children were playing there, laughing, running. They had never known war. After today, they would know nothing else until this was over. Prepare the second fleet, she ordered. And the third. We are going to need them all. In the Dominion throne room, the High Queen received the news of the third fleet's destruction. For a long moment, she did not speak. 800 ships. Gone. In 11 minutes, the old Verath who had warned her stood nearby. He said nothing. He did not need to. Send the 5th fleet, the High Queen commanded. And the 7th. And the 9th. Send everything we have. I want those human ships destroyed. Your Majesty, the old Verath said carefully. Perhaps we should consider. I will not negotiate with prey. The High Queen's voice was a shriek. They are soft. They are weak. One lucky battle means nothing. The old Verath bowed and withdrew. He did not argue. There was no point. The High Queen would learn the truth soon enough. They all would. In the depths of space, Admiral Oyeleran received reports of Dominion fleet movements. They were sending everything. Thousands of ships. It was exactly what the human war planners had predicted. They think numbers will save them, he said quietly. They think if they send enough ships, they can overwhelm us. His tactical officer, a young woman whose grandmother had been among the last generation to train in the old ways, looked at her screens. Admiral, We are detecting 3,000 Dominion warships on approach vectors. More are mobilizing. Kenji nodded. Signal Earth. Tell them to send the rest of the fleet. All of it. He paused. And tell them to wake the silent ships. His tactical officer went pale. Sir, the silent ships? Are you certain? The Varath want to see what humanity can do. We will show them everything. In sealed hangars in the Oort cloud, ships that had never been used began to power up. The Silence-class stealth destroyers. Ships so advanced that even human scientists did not fully understand how they worked. Ships that could appear anywhere without warning and disappear without a trace. Ships built for one purpose: to end wars as quickly and completely as possible. The galaxy had wondered for over a century why humanity chose peace. Now they would learn the answer. Humanity chose peace because they knew what they could do if they chose war. The Varath were about to find out, and they would never forget. The campaign lasted 47 days. In the history of galactic warfare, no major power had ever been broken so quickly. The human fleet moved through Dominion space like a storm that could not be stopped. They did not conquer worlds. They did not occupy territory. They simply found Varath military forces and removed them. Fleet after fleet was destroyed. Station after station was dismantled. The great war machine of the Dominion was taken apart piece by piece. The 5th fleet fell in 8 minutes. The 7th lasted 12. The 9th managed to retreat before the humans arrived, only to be caught by silent ships that appeared from nowhere and vanished when their work was done. Admiral Oyeleran commanded the main force, but he was not alone. 12 admirals led 12 battle groups, each one operating with perfect coordination. They communicated through quantum links that could not be intercepted. They made decisions faster than the Varath could respond. They were always where the enemy did not expect them to be. In the throne room on Varath Prime, the High Queen watched her empire crumble. Every day brought news of another defeat. Every hour brought reports of another fleet destroyed. Her advisors told her to negotiate. Her generals told her to retreat. She refused to listen. They are only humans, she screamed. They are healers. They cannot defeat us. The old Varath who had warned her no longer came to court. He had gone to his estates in the outer colonies, as far from the fighting as he could get. He knew what was coming. On the 32nd day of the war, human ground forces landed on Varath colony worlds for the first time. The Dominion expected slaughter. They expected revenge for Saint Alara's hope. They prepared their civilians for death. What happened instead confused everyone. The human soldiers moved through conquered cities with weapons ready but fingers off triggers. They secured military installations and captured Varath warriors. But they did not kill prisoners. They took down Dominion flags and symbols, but they did not harm civilians. And then, something strange happened. Human medical teams followed the soldiers. They set up field hospitals in the ruins of Varath cities. They treated wounded Varath alongside wounded Silori refugees. They gave food to hungry civilians. They provided medicine to the sick. A Varath mother, hiding in her home with her children, watched through a crack in her door as a human soldier stopped in the street. A Varath child had fallen and scraped his knee. The child was crying. The soldier knelt down, pulled a bandage from his pack, and carefully wrapped the wound. Then he gave the child a piece of candy and walked on. The mother did not understand. These were the humans who had destroyed 1,000 Dominion warships. These were the warriors who had killed millions of Varath soldiers. Why were they helping her child? A human medic found her later that day. The mother expected death. Instead, the medic examined her children, gave them vitamins, and left water and food for the family. Why? The mother finally asked. Why do you help us? We attacked your hospital. We killed your people. The medic, a young woman with tired eyes, paused at the door. Your leaders did that. Your military did that. You are not your leaders. Your children are not your military. She gestured at the ruins outside. We did not come here for revenge. We came here to make sure this never happens again. There is a difference. Stories like this spread across the conquered colonies. The humans were terrifying in battle but gentle in victory. They destroyed fleets without mercy but treated wounded enemies with care. It made no sense to the Varath. It made no sense to anyone who was watching. On a news network watched by billions, an alien commentator tried to explain what was happening. We are witnessing something unprecedented, she said. The humans fight with absolute efficiency. Their weapons are beyond anything we have seen. Their tactics are flawless. They have destroyed 90% of Dominion military power in less than 5 weeks. And yet, on every world they capture, they are setting up hospitals. They are treating the wounded. They are feeding the hungry. It is as if they are two different species, killers and healers occupying the same bodies. On Earth, President Okonkwo gave an address to the Terran Parliament. Her face was drawn with exhaustion. She had not slept more than 3 hours a night since the war began. "Some of you have asked why we treat Verith wounded," she said. "Some of you have demanded that we make them suffer as they made us suffer. I understand that anger. I share it." She paused. "But we did not go to war to become monsters. We went to war to protect ourselves and to protect others. The moment we start killing civilians and torturing prisoners, we become what we are fighting against." She looked at the screen showing casualty reports. Human losses, 340 soldiers in 47 days. Verith military losses, over 4 million. Verith civilian losses, 0 confirmed kills by human forces. "We are proving something to the galaxy," Okonkwo continued. "We are proving that strength and mercy can exist together. We are proving that you can be the most dangerous force in existence and still choose to be kind. That is what makes us human. That is what makes us different." On day 45, the human fleet arrived at Verith Prime. 100 Thanatos-class dreadnoughts took position in orbit around the Dominion homeworld. Below them, 30 billion Verith civilians looked up at the sky and waited to die. Admiral Oyaleran stood on the bridge of the inevitable and looked at the planet below. His finger was near the button that would give the order to fire. One command and he could turn Verith Prime into a dead rock. Every death at St. Ilara's Hope would be avenged 1 billion times over. He thought about Dr. Yuki Tanaka. He had met her once, decades ago, at a conference on medical ethics. She had been young and idealistic, full of hope for a galaxy where healing mattered more than fighting. She had told him that humans had a responsibility to be better than their history. She had been one of the survivors. She was on Earth now, recovering from her wounds. He wondered what she would want him to do. He knew the answer already. "Open a channel to the Dominion throne room," he said. "All frequencies." The High Queen's face appeared on the screen. She looked broken. Her mandibles hung slack. Her compound eyes were dull with despair. "Human Admiral," she said. "Have you come to kill us all?" Kenji shook his head slowly. "We could destroy your world. Every human in this fleet wants to. Your forces killed our doctors. They killed our patients. They killed children who were already suffering." He let that sink in. "But we will not do it. Because that would make us what you accused us of being." The High Queen stared at him. "Then what do you want?" "Unconditional surrender. Your remaining military forces will stand down immediately. Your war leaders will face trial for crimes against the Hospital Accords. Your government will sign a new agreement with humanity and the Galactic Concord. And you will personally broadcast an apology to the galaxy for what you did." "And if I refuse?" Kenji's eyes were cold. "We could glass your world. We could destroy every colony you have left. We could hunt down every Verath warship and every Verath warrior and eliminate your species from the galaxy entirely. We have the power to do this. Do not make us prove it." The High Queen looked at the fleet in orbit. She looked at the weapons that had destroyed her empire in less than 2 months. She thought about the billions of her people who would die if she refused. For the first time in her life, she bowed her head. "I surrender," she said. "The Dominion surrenders." Admiral Oyaleran closed his eyes. The war was over. Humanity had won, and they had done it without becoming the monsters they could have been. He hoped it would be enough. He hoped the galaxy would remember not just how they fought, but how they chose to stop fighting. He hoped this would never have to happen again. The war crimes tribunals were held on neutral ground, in the Great Hall of the Galactic Concord Station that orbited between stars. Representatives from every major species came to watch. They filled the galleries. They crowded the corridors. They wanted to see how humanity would treat those who had attacked them. Dr. Yuki Tanaka sat in the front row of witnesses. The wound on her head had healed, but the scars remained. She had not spoken publicly since the attack on St. Ilara's Hope. Now she watched as the Verith officers who had ordered the destruction of her hospital were brought before the tribunal. Fleet Master Vexal was not among them. He had died with his fleet in the first battle, but his superiors were there. The admirals who had given him his orders, the generals who had planned the attack, the politicians who had approved it, even the High Queen herself, Stripped of her title and her power, the evidence was presented over 3 weeks. Communications, records, sensor logs, survivor testimonies. The tribunal heard about the refugees who had come to St. Alara's Hope seeking healing. They heard about the children in Ward 7. They heard about the doctors and nurses who had died trying to protect their patients. When it was time for sentencing, the gallery fell silent. Everyone expected executions. The Verath had killed over 4,000 people in a deliberate attack on a medical facility. By the laws of almost every species in the galaxy, this was punishable by death. President Okonkwo stood to address the tribunal. Her voice was steady. Humanity abolished capital punishment 200 years ago. We did this because we learned that killing in cold blood, even as punishment, damages the souls of those who do it. We will not resume the practice now, no matter how much the guilty deserve to die. The gallery stirred with confusion. The Verath prisoners looked up with something like hope. However, Okonkwo continued, mercy is not the same as weakness. These individuals ordered the attack on a hospital. They chose to kill healers and patients. Therefore, their sentence will reflect the nature of their crime. She turned to face the prisoners. You will spend the rest of your lives working in human hospitals. You will clean floors. You will carry supplies. You will watch as human doctors save lives every day. You will see the faces of those you tried to destroy. You will learn what you took from the galaxy, and you will live with that knowledge until you die. The High Queen's compound eyes went wide. You would make us servants? This is your justice? Yuki Tanaka stood up. The gallery went silent again. Everyone knew who she was. Everyone had seen her face in the reports about the attack. I was there when your ships fired on my hospital, she said. Her voice was quiet but carried through the hall. I held my friends as they died. I found the bodies of children I had been treating for weeks. I watched everything I had built burn. She walked toward the prisoners, stopping just outside arm's reach. I wanted you to die. For months, I dreamed of your deaths. I imagined watching your ships burn the way my hospital burned. She paused. But then I remembered why I became a doctor. I became a doctor to save lives, not to take them. If I demand your deaths, I become less than what I was. I lose something I cannot get back. She looked at the High Queen directly. You will work in our hospitals. You will see us save Verath patients. You will see us treat your people with the same care we give to everyone. And maybe, in time, you will understand why what you did was so terrible. Not because you killed humans, but because you killed the idea that mercy could exist in this galaxy. Yuki turned and walked back to her seat. The gallery was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, someone began to clap. Then another. Then the entire hall was applauding. Not for vengeance, for justice that did not require more death. The Verath prisoners were taken away to begin their sentences. It was strange justice, but it was justice. 3 months after the tribunals ended, a new document was signed in the same hall. It was called the St. Alara Accords, and every major power in the galaxy agreed to it. The document was short. It added only one clause to the original hospital accords that humanity had written over a century ago. Any attack on a medical facility, of any species, by any power, will be considered an act of war against the United Terran Republic. Response will be immediate and absolute. No one asked for amendments. No one suggested changes. No one complained about human arrogance. They had all seen what happened when humanity decided to fight. They had no desire to see it again. On Earth, the vaults were sealed once more. The great doors on Luna closed. The Thanatos-class dreadnoughts returned to their berths. The silenced ships vanished back into the Oort cloud. The old soldiers went home to their families. Admiral Kenji Oyelaran stood in a quiet garden on Earth and watched the sun set. He had spent 47 days commanding the most devastating military force in galactic history. Now he was just an old man again. He was glad. A young woman approached him. She was an alien, a Silori with silver skin and large dark eyes. She wore the uniform of a Galactic Concord ambassador. Admiral Oyelaran? She asked. May I speak with you? Kenji nodded and gestured for her to sit beside him on the garden bench. I have a question, she said. I have been thinking about it for months, and I cannot find an answer. I hope you can help me. I will try. She looked at the sunset. You destroyed the Dominion in 47 days. You broke an empire that had conquered 42 worlds. Your weapons are beyond anything we have ever seen. Your ships are faster and stronger than anything in the galaxy. She turned to look at him. Why did you go back to peace? Why did you seal away your weapons again? You could have conquered everyone. You could have ruled the galaxy. Kenji was quiet for a long time. The sun continued to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. When I was young, he finally said, I studied history. Human history. I learned about the wars we fought before we reached the stars. Wars that killed billions. Wars that destroyed entire continents. Wars that almost ended our species forever. He looked at his hands. Old hands. Hands that had given orders that killed millions of Varath soldiers. Humans are very good at war. That is our curse. We think faster than most species. We adapt better. We feel more deeply. Which means we fight more fiercely. When we commit to violence, we commit completely. The Solori ambassador listened in silence. We chose peace because we were terrified of ourselves. Kenji continued. We had seen what we could do. We had felt the emptiness that comes after victory. We knew that if we kept fighting, we would eventually destroy everything. So we stopped. We chose to heal instead of harm. We built hospitals instead of warships. He smiled sadly. The Varath thought we were weak because we chose not to fight. They were wrong. The choice not to fight is the hardest choice we ever made. Every day, every human struggles against the part of themselves that wants to dominate, to conquer, to win at any cost. We call it the old hunger, and we fight it every single day. The ambassador thought about this. But the Varath made you break your peace. They made you become what you were trying not to be. Yes, Kenji's voice was heavy with grief. They did. And now we have to make the choice again. We have to put away the weapons and go back to being healers. It is harder this time. We remember how easy the fighting was. We remember how good it felt to be powerful. He stood up and looked at the last light of the sunset. The galaxy sees our hospitals and thinks we are gentle. They are wrong. We are not gentle. We are the most dangerous species in existence. And every single day, we choose not to be. That is what makes us human. That is what we hope the galaxy will understand. The Solori ambassador stood beside him. She thought about the war. She thought about the tribunals. She thought about the new accords. She thought about the human doctors who were still treating Varath patients. Even after everything that had happened. I think I understand, she said quietly. Your peace is not weakness, it is strength. The strength to hold back what you could become. Kenji nodded. The Varath forgot that. They thought because we chose mercy, we were incapable of anything else. They were wrong. And the galaxy saw what happened when they reminded us of what we used to be. He turned to walk back to his home. The ambassador followed. Will it happen again? She asked. Will someone else attack a hospital? Will humanity have to fight again? Kenji stopped at his door. He thought about Dr. Tanaka, still rebuilding her life after the attack. He thought about the children in Ward 7 who would never grow up. He thought about all the things humanity had sacrificed to become what they were. I hope not, he said. I hope the galaxy remembers. I hope no one is ever foolish enough to test us again. He opened his door. But if they do, if someone else attacks our hospitals, if someone else kills our doctors and our patients, he looked back at the stars that were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. We will be ready. We will always be ready, and we will never enjoy it. That is the difference between humanity and the empires that came before us. We do not seek war. We do not celebrate it. We simply end it when we must. He stepped inside and closed the door. The Solori ambassador stood alone in the garden. She looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, human hospitals were still healing the wounded. Human doctors were still saving lives. Human ships were still patrolling the borders, keeping the peace they had fought so hard to restore. She understood now. Humanity was not the gentle healer the galaxy had believed. They were something far more complex. They were a species at war with themselves, constantly choosing kindness over cruelty, peace over power, healing over harm. And as long as they kept making that choice, the galaxy was safe. But if anyone ever made them stop choosing, if anyone ever reminded them of the old hunger, she shivered and walked away into the night. Some lessons, she thought, only needed to be taught once. The galaxy would remember. Forever.